What's up, and welcome back to Interpreting the Scares. That's right, we're moving right along on our October month of spooky films with Paranormal Activity 2. One thing I've always found fascinating is that I remember going to the first Paranormal Activity film in theater and my experience with it overall as clear as day, and that was 11 years ago. And I can't actually remember much about my experience with the second film. I don't even know how I felt about it overall. I don't remember my hype over it. I don't remember thinking, oh my gosh, they're actually making a sequel to that first film? I can't wait! None of that comes to mind. In fact, even though I've seen the first Paranormal Activity film for what feels like a million times, I've only really seen any given sequel to it once. So continuing on this adventure ought to be kind of an interesting argy-bargy. So let's get cracking. This review is brought to you by the word of the day, argy-bargy, a vigorous discussion or dispute. Paranormal Activity 2 takes place just a few weeks prior to the events of the first film when a similar entity seems to be attacking Katie's sister's home. It also seems to be obsessed with her young son, Hunter. The more the family fights against the entity, the stronger and more violent it becomes. You know, I hate to say it, but I think as a whole, this movie is actually better. But honestly, only for technical reasons. First of all, you'll probably not only recognize this as the movie with baby Hunter, but also the first film to set up cameras all over the house, which seems like an obviously great choice for found footage. Not only that, but it answers the question more logically as to why these people are filming something in the first place and why they continue filming afterwards. They were originally filming to document a new baby coming into the house, and then they install security cameras all around the place because they had a break-in or something. And the cameras they install, they're always filming, so that explains that. It also allowed for some technically better editing. Nothing groundbreaking, mind you, but it wasn't as choppy as the first. Now, there were moments here and there where it had the same problems with editing as the first, where they would shut off the camera and turn it back on only a few seconds later, mid-sentence. Nobody would logically do that, but thanks to the stationary cameras all around the house, those problems were, less evident. It really honed in on the paranormal aspect of these movies. Now, the first film had a lot of family dynamic in it, so there's a lot of random scenes of just people interacting and little else. But every few seconds in this movie, it feels like it would return to a stationary night vision camera that, much like the first film, captures more and more things as the film progresses. It clearly wanted to be scarier than the first movie, and I'll admit that I definitely jumped more watching this movie than I did with the first film during this rewatch. Now, maybe that's because I've seen the first way too many times to count, and I didn't fully remember the spooky moments in this one. I'm not sure, but the scares were indeed effective, but I think that's partially a negative. One of the best things about found footage is just how amateur it feels like, or it should feel like. This could potentially happen to anybody, so the argument has to at least feel as such. The problem with less family dynamic means less grounded and down-to-earth moments that get you comfortable with these characters. They have some of these moments, don't get me wrong, but because it's so saturated with those stationary cameras, it's not as strongly believable as the first. I mean, heck, you also kind of have to admit that most people don't have the finance to afford a ton of cameras all around their houses that transmit data 24/7. Most people don't have a giant house with a pool and hot tub. Most people definitely can't afford a live-in nanny. So all of these things add up to less and less people being able to relate to what's happening to these people, all that. Again, Paranormal Activity 1 was a two-person single-family home. It was 2 floors, but otherwise it was a pretty small house, and something that you could probably relate to. I can appreciate the cliche of wanting to get bigger and bigger as a film franchise, but in these types of movies, less is almost always more. Let's go ahead and talk about the final score for a second. This will most definitely be interesting. From a technical vantage point, like I said, I think they made a lot of smarter decisions in this movie than the first that made it stand out as unique. When you think about Paranormal Activity, it's easy to think about a bunch of cameras set up all around the house to capture whatever might occur. And this was the first film to really showcase that idea. It was also really smart to be a prequel, which isn't what you typically come to see from these found footage films. Being a prequel, it was able to help unravel the story of what happened in the first film a little bit more. It gave you some, but not all answers as to what in the world is going on. But at the same time, less is more. It was slightly less believable when they tried to expand the craziness of the situation, which I feel like, only gets worse and worse from here on out. That technical score is 74%. 84%. And because I still really enjoy this movie, I gotta give my personal bias score a 94%. When we average these scores together, we come to the final rating of 84%, 84 out of 100 possible stars, or a B letter grade. In case you're wondering, or forgot, I rated the first Paranormal Activity movie 83%, so this was only scored 1% higher for, again, technical reasons. If you look primarily at my bias score, that tells you that I'd prefer watching the original film over this when given the choice. Because my bias score for the first movie was 100%, while it's 94% for this. But the technical score for the sequel was 6% higher than the original, which was just enough for this to slightly come out on top. But I'd like to hear your thoughts on the movie in the comment section down below. Are you a fan of Paranormal Activity? And if so, where do you rank number 2? As for YouTube, you guys know what to do. Hit the thumbs up button if you enjoyed this review, because there's always more like it coming out each and every single day. Hit the subscribe button and bell to be notified when I come out with my review for Paranormal Activity 3. And until then, guys, peace out.
Dave examines movies we just watch for fun. Davey is the expert. He is the #1 critic that I go to when I need a movie pick. Thanks for joining up with us.